Thanksgiving and looking forward to the holidays. Somebody was talking about, and you can start taping now, Josh. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
But let's get to the agenda. So roll call, agenda items. Typically, people don't have new agenda items, but if anybody does, once we go through this, please speak up. Just want to give a quick update on what's been going on with the strategic plan. Lessons learned. It's always a good practice to sort of, once you almost finish a project or whatever, to go back and look at, hey, what did we do well? What did we, what could we do better? What should we focus on in the future? So that's going to be a big part of the meeting. And then secondly, any ideas that you might have for 2023 for key initiatives for this meeting. Open up the public comments if there are any, and then do the wrap up next steps meeting. And something there is an executive council meeting that is all the committee chairs that Doug has called for Monday. And if anybody has any questions about that or any thoughts about that, typically the agenda is, every committee gives a brief update of what they've been working on. I think another topic is something that Helen got involved with when she subbed for me at the last meeting was, just committee sort of assignments and process and things like that. So those are the two key topics. If every committee, I think there's 12, 13, 14, gives a 5-minute update, it ends up, right there is about a good hour.
Hello.
Hello, Helen. We can start now.
Oh, right. You know what? I can't sign in on my iPad for whatever reason. So I came over here to the PC and I'm all on, but it says there's no microphone connected to your computer. So now I've got it both ways here. I see you on the screen and hear you on the phone. So we'll figure it out later.
Part of the reason we were bugging is we didn't have a quorum without you, but Wes did send me a quick email and said he's going to join but be late. So everybody's here now except perhaps Frank and Wes is planning to join us. Anyway, and then December meetings and availability for whether we want to do a meeting on the 22nd. I want to remember to bring up those two topics at the end. So any other topics you want to discuss? Again, we've have two 25-minute sessions to talk about two key topics. Okay, Josh, next slide. It'll just be another thing. So strategic planning update and discussion. We in our committee meetings, last one especially, we talked about some concerns. Just perhaps with how do you measure success with the strategic plan. And Stuart's been very helpful. We're meeting with Doug. Stuart, Doug, and I are meeting tomorrow just to go over some of our final input on the plan. And we'll be sure to update you after that meeting. But I'm confident that at the end of the day, we'll have a good strategic plan that we're all happy with some tweaks of the current strategic plan. Also want to talk to them about making sure that, it comes to life in the budgeting process. So those are the two key topics. So that's about it as far as the strategic planning update. So a draft has been sent to the board. Stuart, and I've been involved, and we're just going to meet and hopefully get our final input to that plan. Going on to the next topic. Any questions on that? Again, the meeting's tomorrow afternoon that we're going to discuss with Doug. And Doug's been great to work with too. Let's go to lessons learned. Next slide, please. Next one, I'm sorry. I just used those. So this is a building slide. So first of all, lessons learned. I pulled this off the internet, but it's an understanding or knowledge gained by experience. And it could be positive or negative. I think when I sent the agenda out, I said we're going to focus on what we could have done better. But I think we'll spend a few minutes on, what we did well. But then it also could lead to the second part of that is experience gained from past actions that should be taken into account in future actions. So maybe some things that we didn't hit on enough or areas that we could have looked at a little bit differently or pursued more that we want to build into our next planning process. So next, and then hit it again, Josh. So what we're going to do is we'll focus on both. we'll focus on what went well or what could have been improved on the strategic planning process. And then what are areas, ideas, concepts that we might have missed that we want to build into our next planning process, or even just handle it separately as a key initiative. It doesn't have to be tied to a 3-year strategic plan. It could be something that we feel critical about that, we want to do some work on. And then finally, Josh, said it one more time. Why are we doing this? It's a documentation for the future. I've been trying to find out, with Josh's help, there's some background noise going on, but I'm okay with it if you guys are. But anyway, my favorite boss in my career is head of marketing at Hershey. I was leaving to come to Purdue Farms, and I said, "What do you need from me?" He goes, "All I need is a 1 or 2 page document that give you the key lessons learned." And I said, "That's it?" And he said, "Yeah." He goes, "I want to know the mistakes you made or what we would have done differently, or what you did well." So, it's something that was drilled into me, and I think it's a common process with project management. So what I was going to say is I've been trying to find out when the last strategic plan was created at Ocean Pines, and can't find out. Like, we're going to get to the bottom of it, but we don't. There's no documentation. So I think with Josh on board and everything, that's not going to happen again. But everything is living online. But part of what we want to do is, 5 years from now, if it's a different committee developing a different strategic plan, they'll be able to look at this document, hopefully, and say, "Hey, this is what they did and what they thought did well, and areas for improvement." And then again, it develops, it drives some, "Hey, was at Hershey, I wish I would have spent more time on new products," or something like that. So it helped to drive that. So I think we're going to get into a 20-minute discussion, and next slide, Josh. I think I have my little work session. I have to do this. You're tired of looking at this. This was, I'll call it, our funnel, our strategic planning flow, our process, and did a lot of work, got it down, got to the 4 or 5 goals that we created, and including new vision and mission, and then turned it over to the operations team to do key strategies, plans of actions, etc. So, but I also want to, remind you on the next slide, Josh, of all the work that we did. I mean, and this just helps to set up, what did we do well? Did we take too long on something, etc. But, the committee kickoff, I would say, was January, February of last year. I remember being on a conference call in Germany when the committee started having meetings. I think the first one was December, but then by January, February, we started to get some legs. We did SWOT analysis. Each of us, each of the committees did a SWOT analysis. We did a SWOT with the executive council. The staff did SWOT analysis to understand, what the opportunities were. That helped drive some of the questions in our survey. We benchmarked 9 other HOAs. Helen did a phenomenal job looking at culture, since, transparency and a bunch of other integrity in that were coming up as issues when we did our SWOT and all that. So went on to our property owner survey development, and this did take some time. I think we did 5 to 7 iterations of it. And worked on that in June, July, but then worked through the board to get approval, and then to create the communication plan and complete the surveys. So, and then, I think it's a little bit of Helen's being on two devices probably is causing that. And then the survey results summary. Again, there's 3 asterisks there. We had 3 board meetings on this in 2021. Going into 2022, which I think is this year, almost done. Can't believe it. Next slide, Josh. We did the property owner survey detail, and we had a town hall. Didn't have great attendance, but we did open it up, sharing the results, posted everything online. Then we started working on pulling this all together, January through March. Had a work session with the board on detailed recommendations, conclusions. Developed, walked out of that, made some tweaks, did the vision, mission, goals, went to the board again, made some tweaks, came back, got approval on all of that. had a meeting with the budget committee, to try to tell them, here's where we're at with, 4 goals and, how it's gonna impact, the budgeting process. That was back in July. And then, turned it over, to John and his team to work on action plans, which they did. They did it pretty quickly. And we always thought, based on the amount of, work that was done and the importance of the community, we thought there needed to be a town hall. That was something that we thought about doing, but I don't know that it's required, but we thought we had that on our action plan, and then bringing the strategic plan to life in the budget planning. So a lot of work. We should all be proud of the amount of work that we did, and we did it as a committee. Each of us did different, homeowners association benchmarks. A lot of you were very involved with developing the, survey and iterations of that. A lot of work on culture, things like that. So we created something from nothing, and it took 20 months to get where we are now, which to me, one of the lessons learned is how can we do it quicker, or what can we shave off, or how do we save time. But a lot of great work, and I'm very proud of the work that we did, and where we got to. So we're just trying to bring it to the end zone and make sure the final I's are dotted and T's are crossed. So that's the work that we've done that hopefully maybe sets up what do we do well, and what can we do better or focus on in the future. So if you go to the next slide, Josh, here's where I'm gonna stop talking and start listening. So I just have, positives on the left-hand side, opportunities on the right. I have a printout here that I'm gonna start writing ideas in for our notes. And I'll open it up for discussion. Anyone? 9:21, we're good.
Well,
Yeah,
oh,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead, Helen.
I was just going to say,
No,
in
I
addition,
don't know
in
if this-
addition to having a great committee, sorry, Stuart. In
That's
addition to
okay.
having a great committee and people willing to put in the time and work, I think one of the positives too was the board, the board's willingness and the GM's willingness to, listen and participate, in the process. I wish, and this probably goes to opportunities. And I was just thinking through my mind, and I don't remember if this occurred or not, so you have to refresh me, but it would have been nice if, like I was looking at the resolution, if maybe we could have met with the board, and did we meet with the board and the GM first and say, okay, according to the resolution, we work with them as directed, or, would they have provided us any specific guidance? Like, could you look at this and this for us? Could you look at, ABC for us? So I'm looking at it both ways. The board was good and, everyone was good cooperating and working on it. But then could we have had a little more guidance from the board from the beginning as for what they wanted specifically?
When we very first started, and I think this might have even been before Bernie was chairing, we did, I think at the time, Larry might have been president of the board.
Yeah.
And he came in and his expectations were very, very different than the vision of anyone on the committee. And if I remember correctly, Colette stepped in and got us on the path that we're on based on what the committee was thinking, based on the resolution of what our.
Lost you, Becky.
Becky, you somehow muted yourself.
Or Jenny.
I think that was
What's that?
Jenny.
That
It's
was
Jenny.
Jenny talking? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we
Yep.
lost Jenny. So Larry came in, did the vision, Colette got involved, and then what happened?
Well, then we got on the path that we're on. I mean, Larry's vision was very, very different of what the strategic complaint to what we actually did here. Larry's vision at that point in time was he thought that everything that the various committees proposed should be vetted by us to determine relevancy, basically. And it evolved into what actual strategic planning is, which is what we're doing. So that's kind of what happened. And actually, I can give you a little history, Bernie, because you were wondering when the last strategic plan was done. And over the course of the years, there was a strategic planning committee, but they took it to a point that was actual bricks and mortar. And they did that reserve study. Do you remember? Does anyone else remember this?
Keep going.
Okay, so that reserve study got done, but it really became, no one saw the forest for the trees, if you know what I mean, and it never went anywhere. Like they got all this information and it never evolved into a strategic plan, except for it was a working plan. And I believe that Public Works actually uses that reserve or what was it called? It's not a reserve study. It was maybe it was a replacement reserve study or something like that. But then the strategic plan that we actually have was never, it was something Colby created on her own, and she did a
Yeah, I
fabulous
remember.
job
Yeah.
with what, but it was something that she was trying to have materialized that never, and she was still with us when we started this.
Yeah.
So what
Mhm.
we saw was what she created from a model one that she got from a course that she took, and she did a really good job with it. It was just something she was trying to get going. And then we started this, and then Larry's vision, and then Colette got it. You know, that's how all of this evolved. This has been going on for several years. And I've been involved in it in different points, but that's how we got where we are.
Yeah, and
Which is where we should be, because this is what an actual strategic plan is,
Right.
at least in my understanding of it.
yeah, and I would just add to that, you had been involved with the last session, and I know they involved some, professor or something that's now retired from South. Long story short, they
Oh,
did,
yeah, yeah.
a survey was done. There was a lot of information collected, but it was never consolidated into a plan. So there was, and we're gonna just try to, was it 8 years ago there was one? Was it 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Critical,
It was
but
8 or 10. It was 8 or 10 years ago. But then that big survey was when, before the one that we did,
Right.
John Bailey, and it really has never, there wasn't a functioning strategic planning committee for quite a period of time.
Right.
And it was John Bailey and Colette who did the survey in 2018, I believe. And I was chairing the communications committee at that point in time, and we were tasked with summarizing it, which there is a document that exists on the summary of that survey. Now, and I'm guessing, and my memory's okay, but it's not that great to be able to say this is exactly when the strategic planning committee as we know it evolved, but it was sometime after that point that.
yeah, I checked with Josh and then, who that was to Frank Daly. Frank Daly's on vacation, but promised to look through his files. I guess he might have been the chair. He was very involved with maybe the last version. So we'll get to the bottom of it, but going
I
back.
can give you the summary of the last version
Oh, I
because
have
I
that.
did it.
I have that, and it was
Oh,
very.
okay.
But that was the one document when you summarized that as the chair of the communications committee that at least had some sense of what were the priorities,
Yep.
So that was very helpful compared to looking at the actual survey.
But there was no strategic planning committee at that point in time to put that into any sort of anything.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Going back to this pause, I like what you did, Helen. I'm not just, I wish we could have done this. I wish we would have done this. I wish the board would have given better guidance. That's another way to look at lessons learned. I wish Bernie wasn't such, dominant factor or something like that. I wish we had a different chair. Let's keep going back to that. So I captured both of those. The board of directors and GM's involvement and participation was a positive, but yet at the same time, we didn't get, we weren't challenged or directed by the board or the GM or received a lot of guidance. We did it back and Stuart, God bless you, but you're the third, you're our third liaison in less than 3 years. So there hasn't been.
That's sort of the issue with continuity.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So,
but I can tell you that my compatriots on the board are dialed into the to this committee. We're very pro strategic planning.
Good. Yeah, I know. That's good to hear. I know you always have been. Let's hear from some other people or anybody. Helen, if you have other ones, any other thoughts?
Well, I'll jump in here, Bernie, and I'll just kind of dovetail on the conversation we're having. But I really liked what we did in terms of getting input from the community. We were just talking about the survey, and Jenny was talking about the previous one that was done, which was what, like 1,000 questions. At 8
It was
page,
ridiculous.
Yeah,
it was ridiculous.
You said that. I'll just second your motion there. So I thought the work we did in making it very easy, user friendly, yet comprehensive, covering all the bases that I think we needed to cover, and certainly being able to take advantage of technology. I think that had a lot to do with getting the response that we did. Because it was, you get online and you're done in 15 minutes.
Yep.
So I thought that was, and obviously we spent a lot of time doing that and working on that, but I think that was obviously critical to getting the kind of input we did from the community.
Very good. I would just say too that the plan or the goals that we created, directly linked to that survey results.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so it is I'll call it community-driven strategic plan. I'm sure somebody in the media will disagree, but 1,900 responses, that's plus or minus 2%. That's a huge response for a survey. And we have, and we use that comprehensive survey to drive overall goals, not necessarily individual amenity goals, but just what was most important to the community as of 6 months ago, or actually it's going on 10 months now. So that's one of the things that I think we did extremely well was the survey and leveraging technology, as I said. So thank you for that, Rob. Josh, you can speak up if you want. I know you're probably multitasking, or at least I would be if I was in your position.
I thought that the survey was very well done, and I was definitely happy with the response, and happy that we were able to spin that kind of format off into some of the amenity surveys that we did that I think were successful. Bernie, do you have any? We talked a little bit offline about the response to those individual surveys around 200, 100 to 200. And the difference between the 1,900 responses received. Any input on why that drop, or why they're still significant if there are only 200 people?
Go on. In teaching marketing research, when you have a big quantity of people, like 9,000 homeowners, and you get 2,000 responses, I mean, any survey you do where you have 1,000, more than 1,000 is good. That's what usually polls use and pollsters use, and they get in trouble if it's a national poll and they only use 1,000 because it varies significantly by swing states. In our community, long story short, there is a formula that you use when you have a smaller set. So maybe within racket sports, you have 500 people. You could, and I taught this, and I have the formula where you can calculate what's the minimum you would need, or what the significance is based on what the population is. So there's many cases you do surveys and you have a lot less people that you're surveying, and the numbers end up being really low. So it's driven by what's your total population, what did you complete, and that drives significance. And I'd be happy to work with you on that. I just have to pull it out of my lectures.
That makes sense. So we're dealing with a subset rather than the entire community when we're talking about some of those amenities. Okay, thank you.
I would say, I don't know how many racket people the racket sports are, and I know we talked before about trying to, why don't more people participate? But yeah, I think again, decent responses by individual amenities so far.
Can I ask Josh a question?
Sure.
Hey, Josh, when the aquatic survey went up, I shared it on a bunch of different social media sites, and then you had an uptick of responses. Instead of just sharing it in the email blast, you think about maybe sharing it on, between, all the different social media sites on Facebook in addition to the email blast. Do you think that might make a difference?
What we did with those, so we put it in the blast, we put it out to press, we put it on the website, we put it on the main Facebook, I think we put it on Instagram, and then we did paper copies at the individual amenities with a QR code, and we put signs on the door with the QR code.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did get it out in as many places as we could think of.
And I think it's probably right not to. So Stuart, I mean, we talked about doing that. It was an idea I had for a survey, and I think there was some concern of, there was like concern about, well, what about getting the, this committee involved? They're not aware of it, but yet, or the arts and crafts group, or these people that, there's a lot of different meetings and other things. Why would you do it on social media sites, but not particularly with, there was a bunch of discussion about that. We decided not to do it, but I'd go back to building on what Rob said. I think the communication plan, which we all worked on, I know Jenny had a lot of input from her experience, Josh, of course, and all of this. And, the way we communicated that, and had, printed copies up, I know Mo helped distribute them while I was out of town, and we didn't really get a hard copy response that many. Rob helped tabulate them, but our communication process, I think, was pretty solid. When we fielded that survey, we had 1,000 within a couple days, which was so. So I would just add that a positive was the communication plan for the survey. We had it in the papers, we had links everywhere, so we did have a pretty good response.
Anybody the communications committee about teaming with them to get the message out also?
I think
just a thought, spitballing.
We did, Stuart. I had Cheryl involved, and I think Jenny, because she was on both committees, I think it was very helpful.
Okay.
And I think Josh is using similar things, like you said, with QR codes and making it simple and things like that. I wish the yacht club maybe would have done a little bit better job. I had dropped off, table cards and stuff like that, but I don't know if we got a lot from them, but it could have been, inside every menu folder, every check folder or something like that. But anyway, we had a good response. Other things beyond the survey, beyond the board.
Can I share something?
Absolutely. I was waiting here for.
So I think, the positives that have been mentioned here, including the establishment of the vision, the mission, the goals, the values that we selected, engaging the board, eliciting community input, the use of technology, the adoption of the survey, not only by us, but by the other amenities that are out there, even though our numbers were low, were excellent, I believe, positive steps. We've identified that we really want to increase our survey numbers, and we're looking, this past discussion recently was on communication and the use of technology such as social media platforms. That's something that I really believe that the strategic committee is going to have to look at and grapple with as we move forward. Because we have seen where social media can be a positive, and we also see where social media input can be a challenge. And the question is going to be, how does the association want to move forward in this type of environment to conduct their business? We have an Ocean Pines website. We have info@oceanpines.org. We have potentially, we could open a Twitter account. But social media accounts are for social input. And I think that that is going to be a challenging discussion as we move forward. So that would be a future initiative. I went online I also think something that's going to be challenging to us, but we've dipped our foot into it, is the strategic planning process, because we have clearly identified our objectives and developed our goals and missions. But as we move forward in the organizational process, strategic planning is an organization's process of defining its strategy and direction and making decisions on allocating its resources to attain strategic goals. It may also extend to control mechanisms for guiding the implementation of that strategy. We did a great job, thanks to Bernie and the group, on environmental scanning. That's when we did all of those surveys of the benchmark communities, and we gathered information and we analyzed that information, and that's how we came up with the vision and the goals and the mission. And now I think our challenge really going forward is going to be to develop the strategies and the operations that we're going to use to make sure that the guts that we have, the goals that we have, come to life and come to reality. And one of the main things that I think is going to be really important in that process is the engagement of all the committees, the communication of what we're doing. And we've identified the surveys, the town halls, and the evaluation processes key to getting that data for us. So one thing the group might want to consider is that we do 2 evaluatory processes a year, perhaps one in January, perhaps one in July, so that we're sending out bait to get information on, so that when we go back to budget in September, we have feedback on sort of what we've done so far. If we bundled that with 2 town halls a year, let's say one in March and one at the beginning of that budget meeting committee, it gives people a chance who might not be connected online and that are mobile to come. We still have a big need in this community for individuals who are non-mobile. And I'll give you an example. I was at the Department of Social Services meeting last month, and we had a representative from the park there. And she's on the committee, and she actually stated, she said, how can I get the resources of the Department of Social Services of Worcester County to my neighbors? My neighbors who don't know who to call, my neighbors who don't know how to connect, my neighbors who, by lack of knowledge or information or mobility, meaning accessibility, they're not connecting. So they're not only connecting with us as a community, but they're not connecting with the larger community either. So we have this issue of what can we do about that? How can we improve connectivity to people who are otherwise disadvantaged? And that's truly a challenge. So that also might be something that we look forward when we talk about communication, is connecting and accessibility with other people. On my floor, I have major piles of papers on my floor to the left of me, and they're grouped. And there are things that I track. And one of the things that I track are the papers, are the financial reports that come out in Ocean Pines Progress. And in January, and I look at the big, I have to tell you, I don't look at the minute writing. I look at the big words. And what I circle in on, because I'm not a finance person, is our positive variance in the budget. And the one thing that really we started out with 1.4 million in a positive variance this year, as reported in January of 22. And in April of 23, the most recent came out with, we'll have a reserve of 600,000. That's projected. I think that's an interesting issue. In December, we were up 824,000. So we went from 1.4 million to 824,000. And the most striking comment that made sense to me, which is an issue that we have in Ocean Pines, is that positive variance to budget is driven by substantial revenue growth in amenity memberships. That concept has been a concept that we identified that the community needs to understand, that the more money we make off those amenities, our homeowners association fees stay steady, I guess it's the word. And that is something we really, I think, moving forward, need to communicate to people. I'll go through my other piles, but I think I've talked enough.
So Becky, what I captured there was a couple things. One, the adoption of the survey into other customer satisfaction, surveys, and the ones that Josh are doing has been a real positive. So I had that as a positive. As far as opportunities, I'll call it, including getting more people engaged or participation in the survey and or just engagement in general, I think is the issue. And then also, making sure the plan comes to life is another opportunity for us to focus on, as well as this whole idea of, I'll call it, serving the disadvantaged and communicating with them and supporting them. That's kind of some of the things I captured, as well as the final one about making sure that, we're communicating the benefit, not only the overall benefit, but the financial benefits of the amenities. So those are some of the ideas that I captured in a couple different buckets here. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just go back to Jenny and then Helen for any other additional thoughts before we move to the next topic. Jenny?
No, I think I'm comfortable.
Helen, anything else? You started us off.
No, likewise.
What about the length of time that it took us? Was it about right? We're a committee. We meet, monthly, which I realized, I guess, when I looked at the resolution, we probably didn't have to meet monthly, but we did a lot of work to get this on track. But
It had taken us 3 years if we didn't meet monthly.
Yeah, I guess my wish is that we could have done it. Maybe there wasn't this process in place and, board approvals and all these other things that didn't necessarily slow us down. I mean, it was we identified it was part of the positive of the process. The board was involved in the GM throughout the process. On the one hand, I wish we could have did it quicker. On the other hand, I'm not sure where we cut back.
Well, I think too, Bernie, a factor in terms of the amount of time it took us is, to a certain degree, we were breaking new ground.
Yeah.
So as this committee continues, I think you'll see, let's say, for example, we do another survey. It won't take us 3 months, 6 months, whatever it was, to put a survey together.
Yeah.
We've done it. We've got the building blocks in place.
Mm-hmm.
That I think it'll make us more efficient as we continue in our roles here, our process.
Okay. So we checked with Helen. We checked with Jenny. Rob spoke up. I don't know if Wes is on. Might have difficulty. The only other minor thing that I would add is when we turned over. And I'm not quite sure how this happened. I tried to figure it out, but we went to our goals, and then we talked about next steps. How do we get the operations team, John, and everybody involved with action planning, whatever? And boom, it was turned over to him, and John created his own template. I guess I would just add, there was probably, and again, his team, it might have been the first time they're developing a strategic plan for their areas. I would have liked some input on that template. to allow for better alignment. I think he used a template that he's, that is very acceptable. But if we would have had a slightly different template, it might have been more succinct and less feedback and things like that. So I'm just going to add provide a template for action planning in the future. But that's about it. Really good discussion. I think we captured a lot. And it's not meant to be, 20 things we did good or 20 things we did bad. It was just getting input from everybody of, hey, what should we focus on in the future? And those that weren't able to attend, we'll ask for their input as well, for those that aren't there today. So thank you for that. Let's move on. We're kind of on time, maybe a couple minutes late, but we'll see what happens in this next section. So the next one, Josh, is really just thoughts and ideas for the advisory committee initiatives to focus on in 2023. Now, we just came up with a couple of them a second ago, and Josh, you can go to the next slide, which is just a blank slide. So a couple that we did is that Becky had mentioned is engagement and getting more people involved with the survey and possibly doing 2 meetings or, possibly 2 points of input a year, as well as 2 town halls to get community input and engagement. And then making sure that the strategic plan comes to life was another one. I guess the third one, from an opportunity standpoint, it's not necessarily an initiative, would be the guidance from the board of director GM. And I think that is something that we'll come back to that. Remind me to come back to that, Helen, if I forget.
Okay.
And then, serving, what are the needs, I'll call it, and how can we help the disadvantaged in the community? And what to do about social media. Is there, do we recommend a policy, or do we do some work? Again, how do other homeowners associations, handle social media, and what's the best practices for homeowners associations? So, a couple ideas there, but it's really just to continue on. Any other thoughts on what, again, let's just assume the strategic plan is approved and gets implemented in the budgeting process, and our values come to life and everything. We're probably 2 to 3 years out before the next plan is due, but it took us a good 16 to 18 months to develop this one. And again, we might be able to cut that back in the future. Any other thoughts on initiatives?
Well, Bernie, you just kind of alluded to it a second ago. I think it would make sense to continue to benchmark, with other communities.
Yeah.
New ones are popping up.
Good.
Some of the existing ones are continuing to grow. Let's, maybe not as formal as we did it last year, but I do think we, in some way, shape, or form, should continue to kind of keep an eye on our keep an eye on our competition, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
I agree with Rob. I remember at one point somewhere in social media, someone, or there would be repeated comments about, well, this community doesn't pay for this or this, we have smaller communities around Ocean Pines. So maybe we could look at them a little bit, to see how they're doing. But I agree, continue to benchmark, and then annually, another survey, maybe not as big, or maybe as big, I don't know, but see how we're doing, in the priorities that were identified. Are we getting better? Are there new initiatives that, the community is interested in that we can then put into recommendations for the strategic plan, which I would think we would be reviewing every year also, to see how that's going.
In the December 22nd progress, there's an article in here that the board is to support the Worcester County Pedestrian and Bicycle Coalition regarding their recommendations for the Route 90 improvement project. So this issue and how it's going to impact our community is really going to be around for a long time. And the question is, I think I'm happy to see that the board was at the point where they recognized that our community score is pretty low on walkability and livability, believe it or not, livability. And that reflects the safety in the overall community. So I'm not sure, I don't know what the right words would be in terms of an initiative, but I think that we have to consider including this, the impact of the larger community on us. Because that bridge at the golf course is going to be significantly changed. Our egress and ability to get on Racetrack Road is going to be changed. So I don't know how to.
So you're saying that the whole Route 90 initiative needs to be a potential thing that we help focus on?
I think it's more than Route 90. I think the takeaway that I took away from the meeting that was at the library and doing the survey and looking at the information that's been given is that Ocean Pines needs to do due diligence to connect with the larger community, meaning when that 4-lane highway comes through here, or whatever has been decided that's going to be done with that highway. How are we as a community going to take advantage of what's coming down the road? And that means that we have to look at our infrastructure in here to best connect with the pedestrian bridge, the bicycle area, because according to what I learned, this is just not a safety issue, but it's also an economic issue. Our legislators, our state legislators are on board with this. Our county legislators are on board with this. This is a lot of money that's out there. So I almost would like to see the initiative be making Ocean Pines a safer, I don't know, pedestrian, making it a safer pedestrian and walkable, and then put the bicycle thing in there, something like that, rather than Route 90. Am I making sense?
I got that. It's interesting when Josh shared briefly what they learned in the Rec and Park survey was, walking and biking were the two areas that people did the most. And I think we can agree that those can be improved. And some work has been done and some work's in process. So yeah, I wrote down what you just said at the end, safer pedestrian.
Yeah, improvements, something like that.
Yeah.
I think in general, what Vicky's saying there is just we need to be cognizant of what the community at large, whether it's the Route 90 bridge, whether it's the building the ROFO on Racetrack Road, whatever it is, how that impacts Ocean Pines in particular, and potentially impacts our strategic initiatives, whether they be around infrastructure, safety, whatever the course or whatever the case may be. And I don't know that that's not necessarily something that would be unique to our committee. I would think, Stuart and the board and the administration would be engaged in that respect as well.
Wasn't that something that they were, do you remember originally we were talking about having our committee be involved with the Route 90, communication, et cetera. And then it was decided, I think, that the board was going to follow through. Am I right?
So we brought the issue to the attention of the board last July. Correct. And to expedite the formation of a committee, the charging document suggested that we would develop an ad hoc committee attached to our strategic committee for the purpose of creating a coalition that would engage multiple stakeholders. That was deferred to the staff to and analyze. Then we had the changeover in elections, and it just kind of got, I don't know what happened to it. And then when Patty Stevens presented her information from Worcester Worcester Pedestrian and Bike Coalition, which she's president of, I think it caught the attention of the board, because it was filled with facts and it was filled with knowledge, and we are a little bit behind the curve, but I think we would have been at the same place with Patty's at the time Patty did her presentation. I think we would have gotten there with a committee. We might have had a larger committee, but I think we would ultimately be in the same place with what Ocean Pines now needs to consider. And my concern with Route 90, as well as other initiatives as we move forward, is that we only have so many people. We only have so many people on the staff. We only have so many volunteers that are really engaged in the community. And there's a feeling in my heart that you can only do so much, and that priorities always take over what also needs to be done. And I would almost advocate for a part-time, non-benefited position on the staff of Ocean Pines that would be perhaps entitled special projects, where an individual could work to do these look at these feasibility studies and bring the information to the board that the board needs. Going back to Jenny's discussion about Mr. Perrone, and I wasn't involved in that meeting, but when he from what I gather from what Jenny said, when he presented with Mrs. Horn, he was really asking the committee to give him specifics. And I do remember that we had a discussion early on that the board was really coming to us as the strategic committee to give them guidance. And the more specific we were with the board, the more they appreciated that. I could be off base, but I do remember us having some sort of discussion about that early on. And that's where we came up with the notion and the concept that we all agreed on, that we weren't going to tell the board how to do it. That was really up to them. We're not going to tell committees how to do it, but we're going to give them the information that they need to suggest to them which path they might want to take, as a planning process committee. And this is sort of where I think the board at times could use assistance. They need somebody to come to them and tell them, what the best way might be, and then they can decide what they want to do moving forward. They might say, no, it's not in the budget. They might say, no, we can do it a different way. But I think help. I think more staff is needed.
Yeah, to that point, Becky, I really good articulation there. So I'll just take a different topic. If somebody isn't responsible for something, or a committee isn't responsible for something, does it get done? It loses priority, or it loses track. So whether it's a part-time position or something like that. I'll give you, what about it? I'll throw it a different to it. Environmental. Who owns environmental at Ocean Pines? Who specifically is in charge of, making sure that, we're working hard to make sure that we're environmental friendly and clean waters and all this other stuff? It's kind of buried probably somewhere within Public Works, I would guess, but I don't know. But so it's another, that's just a different example of, there's not one person that owns that. So it's hard to make significant progress. So I hear what you're saying. And then I also hear about, making recommendations to the board on things like this as an opportunity. I also wrote down support for and advice to other communities where they need it. So whether it's helping them do a survey or whatever. is another opportunity for this committee.
Yeah, I think your environmental, and we've talked about this as a group, I think that was well said, and I think the environmental issue is ongoing. I will tell you that I went to the recycling center yesterday, and I couldn't even get my boxes in the cardboard bin. It was full, and the yard was a mess. I went to the yard to drop off leaf bags. It was closed at 3 o'clock. I've read the information that residents might have to buy a permit to drop off their leaves. What if I couldn't afford to have somebody do my yard and pick up my leaves, and I couldn't get to the yard because I was working from 9 to 5, and the yard's only open for a month of the year? I mean, there's a lot of issues here that aren't, I would say, resident friendly. They're barriers rather than helpful issues. So this green initiative needs to be looked at from a strategic standpoint. Do we need to enlarge the yard? Do we need to enlarge the recycling center? Do we need to add a compost center? This is really big right now in a lot of communities.
Yep.
Sea level is supposed to rise by a foot by 2050. Why are we building bulkheads that are the same height that we have?
Yeah.
So that is part of the strategic planning process. It's stepping back from the day-to-day operations and just not getting through the year budget. It's really honestly looking at that short-term, middle-term, and long-term, where are we going issue.
Yep.
And that is going to be, I think, the challenge moving forward. It's going to be really setting forth these 3, 5, and 10-year benchmarks, and then operationalizing them. How are we going to get there? What do we have to change? What do we have to do to get there?
Very good. Josh, go to the next slide. We're going to continue this discussion just for a few more minutes, but did anybody read the CO7 purpose and functions of our committee? Yeah, I think I said it in my cover note for the meeting. Is I hadn't looked at it in about 1.5 years, I guess. I don't know. But it just seems like the purpose of the committee was to support and provide guidance on a strategic plan, as opposed to, and again, I call that reactive, as opposed to, we've been proactive. Like the chairman of the board or the GM didn't have it on their to-do list to develop a strategic plan. Like, we told them, we drove the process, we drove the thing, and we created this, and then it was taken over. So I just didn't know what you thought about, like, I could look at this and say, we could sit around and wait till the board or John asks us to do something. That's the way the resolution is written, and maybe we need to make a recommendation to change the resolution, but I didn't know what your thoughts were for those that might have reviewed it. And I can easily share it. It was in the email that was sent out for this meeting, but again, function A, gather facts, investigate alternatives, evaluate issues upon the request of the board and or the GM. Perform community needs as requested by the board of directors and the GM. Solicit information from pertinent resources within and outside the association for the consideration of the board and GM. And some things we talked about today line up with that, and performs other functions as directed. So it really is, it's kind of interesting when you look at this. I would just say this is a reactionary purpose as opposed to a proactive, a lot of Becky smarter than me just with thinking forward on some of these longer term issues that we need to bring attention to the board as opposed to waiting for them to come to us. They have a lot going on. So any other thoughts on this resolution?
Well, I think your meeting with Doug tomorrow would be helpful to learn what his expectation is for this year. because if it, a lot of it is going to depend on if it's going to be welcomed or not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you spend all this time doing work and it's not going to be welcomed, which, I think different presidents approach it differently. I think Becky has really wise ideas, and I always thought of a strategic plan as a framework. So a committee brings something to the board of directors. The board of directors says, okay, does this fit into our strategic plan? Yes, it does. Okay, do we have the money to do it? And then evolve from there. So, I think we have to, I think your meeting with Doug will be a guideline for the next 6-8 months anyway.
I think that's an excellent point. And the other point that I want to bring up, and Bernie, you even used the words evidence base. There's nothing in that resolution that comes from an evidence standpoint. So there's no definition of strategic management. There's no outline of how it's done. There's no purpose according to the evidence of what it is and where it goes. And that's something I think it's also a really good lesson for us, because we need to be sure that we're separating strategic planning from project management.
Yes.
We are not project managers. We are strategic planners. And it's very different. It's difficult because those two can cross and they can get muddled. And that's going to be a challenge for us as a group to stay focused on planning. And you can't plan without data, and you can't plan, and obviously some of it's gut, but data is our evidence. And I think our resolution should reflect that. And if we're using the process of SWOT to get to the place where we've gotten, that should be in there. Or there should be some sort of framework that guides the process of the group. Because I remember in graduate school, and I'll never forget it, I remember a professor saying to me, I don't care what you think. I want to know what you know. And I just remember that so vividly. And it was not, I don't want your personal opinion. I want to know what you know. And that was back up what you say with evidence. So.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I would, and we'll talk to Doug about that as well. That's a good point. Because I can sit here and look at this document and say, okay, we'll sit around and wait to see what the board wants us to do.
Yeah, no.
And that's not a type of, and I had an informal discussion about, I ran into somebody and I said, yeah, hey, it's like, yeah, well, I guess for next year, we'll start working on a survey and things like that. And the person said, why would you do another survey? And so there is some, I'll call it, again, and so Doug said to me, what do your committee want to do? I have 4 or 5 things based on this meeting, that I think we should focus on. So we'll get some input on that, but at the end of the day, we might have to change this, make a recommendation to change the resolution.
I'm curious, Bernie, not to cut you off. I'm just curious about the item 5, the report that we're supposed to file every October 31st.
Yeah, I did that and we reviewed it in our last meeting, but it just seemed.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah, I thought we had to meet. I mean, I looked at this and said, we've been meeting monthly. It's like, well, we don't need to meet monthly. There's some work they could put into it. It's all your time. I've been anal about making sure we meet monthly. Today's the November meeting, even though it's December 1st. But yeah, that's the one requirement, I think, of the committee. And then also just that you can vary from 3 to 9 members. Jenny, any perspective on, and again, I pick on you because you're on other committees, on your resolutions? Are you pretty lined up with what your resolution is, like say in the communications committee?
I have never participated in changing a resolution necessarily, because they seem to be rather comprehensive for their time anyway. You know what I mean? Yeah. With strategic planning, I've always kind of looked at it as bricks and mortar versus philosophy. And I think that we're looking to combine the two in some ways. Like we don't want to be project managers. I think Becky's absolutely right about that. But from a philosophical perspective, and you say, okay, does this fit into our strategic plan? I think there might be a way to make that resolution a little bit more comprehensive.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not, again, it's kind of funny. I knew the process, but I didn't know what the resolution stated. So, let's move on, unless there's any other comments. And again, I think we come up with some great ideas. I think we're almost on time here, a little bit short on open comments, but if you go to the next slide, Josh, please. Public comments, open discussion. I can't tell if there's anybody else on the line.
Just
other
one
than-
positive,
yeah.
one positive comment.
Yes.
So how about this? Trust, shared decisions, equal power, sustainable change comes from residents. That's one quote that I found. Ocean Pines shares a family, only positive stories. It takes 3 positives to negate 1 negative. I think as we move forward, I used that word, I shouldn't say that. Moving forward, it would be really cool if we worked on this positive piece.
Yeah.
If we really pushed this thankful gratitude attitude, the attitude of gratitude column in something or a page on the website, because we have such a negative vibe going on right now that the only way to turn this Titanic is that we're going to have to do some positive stories. So that's what I would suggest, is that we really move forward with some positive initiatives of caring and sharing the attitude of gratitude.
I think that's something you could work with the communications committee on, or an idea to share with them, because I mean, the communications, if the committees would work together on some of these things, it would really, it could be totally volunteer driven. You know what I mean? It doesn't need to include staff.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it does, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not.
Remember, I agree with you, Jen, because
Yeah.
it has to come from the bottom up.
Grassroots.
You know, it has to come from within the community, the people that were highlighted in the community that are serving the general area, that are making a difference in our community. And there are plenty of people that are positively doing this in Ocean Pines. Why? We need to give them a shout out. This is the type of community that we want moving forward.
Josh, don't you think this is something that Cheryl would embrace?
Yeah, and it's something I'd love to share too. If we get positive stories like that,
Yep.
I mean, we usually jump on them and share them as quickly as we can, but they don't always come in. A recent example was the Teal Bay Mitzvah team.
Yay.
Give them a shout out. You know, we
Yeah.
shared their story of raising collecting food donations for people that needed it, local kids.
Yeah.
That was picked up by a TV station, which did a piece on that too. So
Yeah.
once we hear about these stories, we're pretty easily able to share them and get them out. Problem is just hearing about
them. So that is the key. How do we get it out that we want to know about it?
Yeah.
I mean,
So
that could be
we-
a post. I mean, that
Yeah.
could be,
Sure.
Josh, but
Yes.
are you grateful for someone in your neighborhood?
Yes. Send me the name of it's like a slogan thing. And then people can submit it.
And maybe that's, Jenny, maybe that's something for the community committee. If they bring that up and run it through the channels, then it can go to the board, it can go to the GM, and then I can jump on something like that.
That was
Okay,
something.
so let me write that down.
Yeah.
That was something.
I'm gonna write attitude of gratitude communications.
I
and
just
hopefully I'll
really
remember what
feel-
that means.
Yeah, I just really feel that, that's gonna flip. If it's an initiative, if it's consistent, if it's engaging, I think potentially we can flip this
Well, we have a couple good things
feedback we're
going
getting.
on right now. I don't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Good. So, we,
But we
uh,
had, I'm
go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead. No, I just want to say, so driving positive communication is a definite opportunity, whether it's communication committee, whether it's us helping to do that, but I think that's potentially, and again, I forget what the numbers were, but 75%, 70% of the people were very positive about Ocean Pines, but this, your quote about the 3 points of negativity, you need 3 positives to it's kind of interesting.
Overcome one.
Yeah, I just try to shut up the negativity, but it does get to me. The other thing I would say is that we might have to put Helen in charge of this, because every time I open the paper, she's doing something like that, whether it's creating a sign for Teal Bay or doing this mitzvah activity. So she's involved in a lot of stuff. But go ahead, Stuart.
Yeah, well, there's a group in town that raised 1,050 pounds of food that they donated to Diakonia. There was no press on that, really. And the same group is running a Toys for Tots drive. They have boxes at the admin building, the yacht club, and the firehouse. And then they're going to be running a coat drive in January. So
Are these Ocean Pines residents?
Yeah, this is Ocean Pines. It's
Yeah, gotta get them.
Who it is? It's the Get Involved group. They raised 1,050 pounds of food last month that they donated to Diakonia, and right now there's a Toys for Tots drive going on.
Can you give Josh that contact?
Oh, absolutely.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
pass that stuff on. If you know about it, send it to me. I'll be happy to share it.
Absolutely, absolutely, because there are good things happening in town. It's just I haven't seen anything in the media at all. So I'll pass everything on to you that I see, Josh.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Josh
That's-
is the one.
Yeah.
I think about, just quickly here, remember we had our 5 core values, and I had submitted to Bernie at one point, how would an organization, embrace core values, and how do you practice, your core values? And one of the things I was thinking, in an organization, you would have an award, an instant award, a recognition because so-and-so exemplified the core value of respect in solving a problem, or collaboration, that kind of thing. Well, also in the community, and I was thinking someday down the line, you could have a community recognition for someone who has exemplified the core values of Ocean Pines, because we don't want those core values to just be words. Okay. I mean, we talked about sustainability already today, but that could be something too, that different groups would be recognized for how they exemplify one of the core values and make it more real. That's all.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
falls to also just bringing the strategic plan to life that we talked about, that
Yeah.
makes sure that it's done. So good stuff. Open comments. Anybody that's on the committee can certainly speak up now that might be attending. Stuart, anybody else, I'll shut up for a second, see if anybody else not on the committee or board liaison or anybody else has any other thoughts or words of wisdom.
Well, talking about the Route 90 project, I know that John Biola's team is actively working with Worcester County officials. I know that Patty Stevens' explanation at our slide presentation was fabulous. She's the go-to girl. We were going to do. Before I was on the board, I remember there was a talk. Previous board members talked about setting up a work group, and when I got on the board, we discussed it, and it was determined it really wasn't needed because of the work that John's group is doing with the county and with Patty Stevens's group. I know he's probably busy doing something right now. I see him online, but I know that there's work going on. It's not like nothing's happening. So I think that we, as the strategic planning committee, should be involved in the strategic plan for how that's going to run, or how we should design. We're not project managers, but design is part of this plan, and how we're going to change that bridge over Ocean Parkway, and as it cuts through our town here, it does divide us between north and south. So that's just my 2 cents. The other thing, I got this information to Bernie about a month and a half ago. Our last meeting, we talked about amenity use, and I don't remember who said it. Didn't seem that our amenities were being used well. I found out that we have 915 swim memberships that were sold last year, and the golf course, and that's swim memberships that are bought by our residents, and the golf course has about between 18 and 2,400 uses by our own town, our own residents a year. It varies between 18 to 2,400. So I got that information to Bernie about a month ago.
Yeah.
And so we are using it. I mean, a strategic plan, and I know the Aquatics Committee is looking right now at redesigning some of the memberships to maybe increase swim club purchases. Talked about some sort of a swimming Lollapalooza over at the core pool. There, nothing's been carved in stone, but they're working on putting together an event for that also. I know Josh is he knows about that, but that's my 2 cents.
Very good. Anything else? Any other comments? It's a requirement that I open it up for public comments, and but that's not why I do it. It's did we miss anything? Is there any other final comments before we wrap up the meeting? So executive council, if anybody has anything that they want me to bring up other than, kind of where we're at on the strategic plan and, et cetera, let me know. But, our next meeting, should we have a meeting in December? This was a great meeting. All our meetings are good meeting, but, I have 2 pages of notes here, to write up. Part of lessons learned, things we did well, but things to focus on it next year. So I think it's, there's enough to keep us busy based on some of the ideas that we had for sure. And we'll be discussing some of that with Doug and Stuart on Friday afternoon. But do you think, I guess the question is, do you think we should have a meeting in December or skip a month and kick it off in January?
Skip a month and kick it off in January.
Ditto.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Any opposed to that?
We
No.
must have a meeting.
No.
I'm
Again,
available for December.
I just, for some reason, I thought it was mandatory that we had a monthly meeting. It was just in my mind. And so I think if you looked at, the stuff that we've done over the past 2 years or 20 months, we accomplished a lot, and it doesn't mean that we have to meet every month. I think, let a month to settle in, kick it off back in January again. And, and we'll start off with, hey, these are the 4 or 5 things that we talked about, focus on. Let's prioritize, let's get going on it. Here's the feedback on, that we got from Doug, et cetera. And I'll write that up as well, as part of these minutes. But with that, it feels sad. I guess I have to wish you happy holidays. I don't know, but
Happy holidays.
Yeah, Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell you, I've been, as some of you know, I've been busy, family, but also I took on this big consulting project, and my final presentation is today at noon, and so it's like, but it's also. And it actually is very similar to some of the issues that we talked about. We're recommending a business plan for somebody to enter a market, but at the same time, they don't have that person on staff. And so it's probably going to lead to some more work, which I don't know that I want to do and whatever. So, but anyway, it's the same thing we talked about. Who owns environmental? Who owns the Route 90 bridge? Who owns, that type of thing. So, but I've been really busy. I'm looking forward to taking a breather after this meeting today. But thank you all for your work and have a great holiday. And if anybody has any other ideas or thoughts on what to focus on in 2023, or anything you want me to bring up at the executive council meeting, please let me know. Josh, if you want, at some point we communicate a lot in between the meetings, but if you want me to do some calculations or send you the formula for calculating what the right sample size is for the amenity,
That would be great.
I'd be happy to do that. So just remind me to get that to you. I'll put it in my notes as well. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
Bernie.
Happy
Thanks.
holidays.
Happy
Happy New
holidays,
Year.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.